It started with a whisper, not the kind you catch in passing at a grocery store or overhear in a crowded waiting room. This whisper came from behind a locked door in exam room 3 at Hillside Children's Medical Center just outside Columbus, Ohio. A whisper so quiet it could have been missed entirely. But Dr. Angela Martinez didn't miss it. She had just returned from a rushed lunch, half a turkey sandwich and a cold cup of coffee, when the front desk rang her line. "Urgent walk-in, 8 years old. Says she's in pain," the receptionist had said. "But something feels off." Angela was used to emergencies. What she wasn't used to was the way this little girl looked at her, wide-eyed, withdrawn, her arms wrapped around a tattered stuffed bunny as if it were the only anchor she had left in the world. Beside her stood a man in his 40s, poorly shaven, reeking of manipulation masked as concern. "This is Lily," he said casually. "My niece, stomachache or something." Angela's instincts fired. She'd seen broken bones, high fevers, and worse. But Lily's silence was louder than any scream. "Can I have a moment with her alone?" Angela asked. He hesitated. Too long. When the door finally clicked shut behind him, Lily looked up and said barely above a whisper, "I think I already broke the promise. He said I couldn't tell." In that single breath, Angela understood. This wasn't just about a stomachache. This was a rescue waiting to happen. Within minutes, protocol was triggered. Officer Ryan Cooper from the local Child Protection Unit arrived. Emma Blake, a trauma-informed social worker, was on her way. Lily, though trembling and terrified, had opened the first crack in the wall built around her, and with that crack the system stirred. What none of them knew yet, not Angela, not Ryan, not even Lily, was that this case would become one of the most consequential child exploitation revelations in the region. It would span counties, uncover false guardianships, and ignite a statewide overhaul of pediatric care protocols. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was a little girl, a doctor who listened, and the softest voice that refused to be silenced. Because sometimes justice doesn't begin with a bang, it begins with a whisper. Let me know if you'd like this introduction adapted into narration format, converted into video script, or visually formatted for presentation. Officer Ryan Cooper had been on the force long enough to know the difference between a scared, chill Lily Harper. What struck him most wasn't her fear, it was her restraint. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't beg. She sat quietly on the edge of the table, clutching her bunny so tightly its seams creaked. Her eyes, however, scanned everything. His badge, his gun, the exit. She was calculating, not hiding. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently, crouching down to eye level. "My job is to make sure you're okay. Can I sit with you?" Lily gave the smallest nod. Dr. Angela Martinez, still in the room, stood behind Ryan like a silent shield. The tension between the three of them held in the air until Lily finally whispered, "Can I draw something?" Angela handed her a clipboard with a blank medical chart and a pen. What Lily drew wasn't a house or a rainbow, it was a floor plan, room layouts, arrows, names. Names like Tom, Janet, Sarah, names that made Ryan's stomach turn. She pointed to one room. "That's where he made me sleep. It had locks on the outside." Ryan kept his voice level. "Who's he?" She didn't say the man's name. She just turned the page and drew his face. Boxy jaw, unshaven cheeks, eyes like dead water. Mike, the so-called uncle, the man in the waiting room. Angela and Ryan exchanged a glance. This wasn't a fluke. This was a pattern. Lily wasn't making up a single moment. She was documenting a life. They moved quickly. While Emma Blake, the child protection social worker, was en route, Ryan escorted Mike out of the building. On the surface, it was routine. Just a few more questions, a copy of his ID, clarification of the guardianship. But beneath the surface, Ryan's gut was burning. Mike had no legal custody paperwork. His answers were vague, even annoyed. "She's just a kid, always making stuff up," he grunted. But Lily wasn't making anything up. Emma arrived within the hour, her presence immediately calming. She knelt beside Lily, introducing herself without asking anything at all. She let Lily color, hum, exist, until Lily of her own accord began to talk. About being moved from place to place, about never staying long, about knowing not to ask questions, about other kids, but they didn't stay either. Each word built a case. Each drawing was a map. And as Emma carefully documented Lily's statements, it became clear. This wasn't one man acting alone. It was part of a broader, more sinister network, one that used Angela made calls to the state pediatric board. Ryan contacted the district attorney. Emma filed for emergency protective custody. By nightfall, Lily was moved into a secure care facility under 24/7 trauma-informed supervision. She had clean pajamas, a warm dinner, and a bed with sheets she got to choose herself, blue with little sunflowers. That night she slept with the door cracked open and a soft light glowing by her bedside. Nobody made her lock it. Nobody stood outside to watch her sleep. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she closed her eyes not from exhaustion but from safety. Let me know if you'd like the next chapter written in similar style, based on Summary 3, or if you want this portion adapted for Na. Bandanoy, based on the content I just provided in Summary number 3. Write a really good paragraph of 500, 700 words. Chat GPT Denoy. The temporary foster home Emma placed Lily in was a warm, two-story house in a quiet Columbus suburb. The yard had overgrown grass, chipped paint on the porch steps, and a wind chime that never seemed to stop singing. But it was safe. Inside, a woman named Gina Holloway, a seasoned, trauma-certified foster parent, greeted Lily with a blanket and a cup of cocoa instead of questions. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "You just have to be here." Lily didn't talk much the first few days. She clutched her bunny close and wandered the halls as if waiting for something terrible to happen. A shout, a slammed door, a stranger arriving to take her away, but it never came. Gina was gentle. The meals were regular. The nightlight stayed on, and no one touched her without asking first. Meanwhile, Emma Blake was unraveling a web. Lily's drawings weren't just memories. They were maps. Emma cross-referenced names and cities, and within days realized that Lily had been shuffled through at least 5 unregistered homes over the course of 2 years. Each guardian had a different name. Some used aliases. One home had been investigated before, but the case was dropped due to insufficient evidence. Now, with Lily's sketches and testimony, the puzzle pieces were falling into place. She brought her findings to Officer Ryan Cooper, who was already working overtime trying to track down Mike, the man who brought Lily to the clinic. Mike had disappeared. His truck was found abandoned 3 counties over. Inside, they recovered a burner phone, a stack of forged documents, and, tucked into the glove compartment, photos of Lily and 2 other children. Ryan handed the photos to Angela and Emma. "I think we're looking at something bigger than we thought," he said grimly. Angela, still shaken from that first exam, nodded. "This isn't neglect, it's organized." With Lily now in safe custody, the state launched a broader investigation into what would later be referred to as the Guardian Ring, an underground child exploitation operation that masked itself behind legal loopholes and forged papers. It wasn't a large network, but it was efficient and terrifyingly invisible. Lily's drawings, her voice, her memory, they were the spark that pulled back the curtain. But even as the legal system mobilized, Emma stayed focused on Lily. She visited 3 times a week. Sometimes they painted rocks in silence. Other times they played go fish or watered the tomato plants in the backyard. Once, Lily handed Emma a folded paper with a single sentence in childlike scrawl. "Do you think I will be normal someday?" Emma had to take a breath before answering. "I don't think you'll be normal, Lily," she said honestly. "I think you'll be extraordinary, because you already are." Lily didn't say anything, but she took Emma's hand and didn't let go for the rest of the hour. Back at the clinic, Angela instituted new intake procedures for all walk-in pediatric cases. Every child without confirmed legal guardianship would now be assessed in private, flagged for a social worker within 15 minutes, and documented thoroughly. No more standard protocol, no more assumptions. It wasn't the end, but it was a beginning. And for Lily, now sleeping through the night drawing gardens instead of floor plans, that was more than she'd ever dared to hope for. Let me know when you're ready to continue with summary number 4, and I'll keep the same emotional depth and narrative voice. Bandanoy, based on the content I just provided and summary number 4, write a really good paragraph of 500, 700 words. Chat GPT Danoy. When Lily's court date was first mentioned, she shut down. Gina found her curled up in the laundry room, silent, breathing fast. Her bunny lay limp beside her. It wasn't fear of courtrooms or judges, or even the man who'd once posed as her uncle. It was the fear of not being believed, of speaking her truth and hearing it fall flat. "I don't want to go," she whispered to Emma during their next session, Emma knelt beside her, gently brushing back Lily's bangs. "You don't have to do anything alone. We'll all be right there. You won't say a word unless you want to. But your voice, Lily, your voice could change everything." Lily stared at her lap. "What if I forget? What if I mess up?" "You lived it. You can't mess it up." Preparation took weeks. Emma and the district attorney's team worked tirelessly to create a trauma-informed process that wouldn't re-traumatize Lily. The courtroom would be partially closed, with a soft light and minimal press. Lily would testify through a video link from a separate room, surrounded by people she trusted. Ryan visited often, bringing his guitar to help Lily relax. Angela taught her grounding techniques, tapping patterns on her knees, slow breathing, naming colors around her. Gina made her favorite spaghetti the night before court. When the day arrived, Lily wore a soft yellow dress that matched the sunflowers she'd begun drawing again. She held Charlie, her bunny, with one hand. In the other, she clutched a smooth river stone painted with the words, "I am brave." Her voice trembled at first, but as the video call began and she saw Emma, Ryan, and Angela seated around her, something shifted. She sat up straighter. "Yes," she answered the first question. "That's him." "No," she said to another. "He wasn't my uncle." She didn't cry. She didn't shrink. She spoke in short, honest sentences. She told them about the rooms, the locks, the fake names. She drew a map on a whiteboard when asked to explain the layout of the last house. At one point, the judge called for a recess, not because Lily faltered, but because the courtroom needed a moment to breathe. The weight of her testimony had been too raw, too real. Back in the waiting room, Emma wrapped her in a blanket and whispered, "You were incredible." Lily looked up. "Did it help?" Emma nodded. "More than you know." Weeks later, Lily stood on the courthouse steps beside the DA. The judge had ruled in her favor. Mike and 2 other suspects had been indicted. A new task force was being formed to track and prevent guardian fraud. Lily didn't understand all the legal terms, but she understood this. She'd been heard. That night, Gina cooked a big dinner. Angela brought cupcakes. Ryan gifted Lily a small sunflower necklace, and Emma, with teary eyes, gave Lily a notebook. On the inside cover it read, "Your story saved lives, and it's only just beginning." Absolutely. Below is a 500-700-word narrative paragraph based on summary number 5, following Lily's life as she transitions into a permanent adoptive home. This chapter focuses on healing, emotional bonding, and the beginning of a new kind of love, one built on trust, choice, and safety. Chapter 5, Where the Sunflowers Grow. The day Lily officially became Lily Hart, the courthouse smelled like floor wax and old coffee. But none of that mattered, because for the first time in her 9 years, she had a last name that wasn't borrowed, forged, or forgotten. The Hart family wasn't perfect. George and Marlene were in their late 50s, semi-retired, with no biological children of their own. Their house had mismatched furniture and a creaky staircase, and George sometimes forgot where he left his glasses. But they had warmth, they had patience, and they had a way of never making Lily feel like a case or a project. She was simply their daughter. After the adoption ceremony, they took her to a diner for pancakes and chocolate milk. Marlene gave her a silver bracelet with the word "chosen" engraved on it. George handed her a packet of sunflower seeds. "For your garden," he said, grinning, "or wherever you want them to grow." That night, Lily stood barefoot in their backyard, holding the seeds in her hand. The moon was bright, the soil was soft, and for the first time she planted something not because she was told to, but because she wanted to. The days that followed were filled with new rhythms. Morning cereal at the kitchen counter, math homework spread across the table, Saturday drives to the library. George helped her build a bookshelf for her room. Marlene taught her how to braid her hair. They bought her a journal with a lock and never once asked to read it. Healing came in waves. Sometimes Lily still woke from nightmares, clutching her pillow like it might vanish. Some nights she left her bedroom light on. She jumped at sudden noises. She didn't like strangers touching her backpack. But George and Marlene never pushed. They learned her cues. When she grew quiet, they waited. When she grew angry, they stayed. And when she grew curious, they listened, not with the intent to fix, but to understand. Lily began drawing again. Not just sunflowers this time, but people. Herself, with a cape. Marlene in a garden hat. George holding a hammer and nails. In every picture, the same thing appeared in the corner. A small stuffed bunny named Charlie, stitched and worn but always smiling. At school, her teachers noticed the difference. She volunteered to read out loud. She joined art club. She stood up for a boy being teased and later told the principal, "No one deserves to feel small." Word of her story spread quietly but meaningfully, not as a headline anymore, but as hope, shared among counselors, whispered in foster circles, held close by social workers on hard days. Lily had become something few survivors ever get to be, a symbol of what can go right. One evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching fireflies, Lily turned to George. "Do you think I'll still remember the bad stuff when I'm old?" He thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe, but it won't be the whole story, just a part of it." She nodded, then added, "I think I'll plant more sunflowers next week." He smiled. "I think that's a great idea. Let me know if you'd like to continue with summary number 6, or if you'd prefer a reflective wrap-up chapter with a life lesson and emotional message." By the time Lily turned 13, her trauma wasn't something she wore on the outside anymore. She had grown taller, her shoulders straighter, her eyes brighter. The house she shared with George and Marlene was now filled with books, potted plants, and watercolor paintings taped to the refrigerator. The sunflower garden in the backyard bloomed every spring, taller each year, a living measure of how far she had come. But healing wasn't linear. There were still days Lily sat at the window for hours, fingers nervously drumming her bracelet. Some nights she still left the door cracked open just in case. Her therapist once told her, "It's okay if scars itch when it rains." Lily didn't entirely understand what that meant at first, but over time she realized it was just another way of saying healing never fully forgets where it started. Yet something remarkable was happening. Lily's voice, once a whisper in a locked room, was now echoing in places far beyond what she could have imagined. It began when Emma Blake, her former social worker and now mentor, invited her to speak at a small training session for new foster parents. The idea terrified her, but Emma promised she didn't have to share anything she didn't want to. So Lily talked. Not about the worst nights, not about the courtrooms or the scars left behind. She spoke about safety, about kindness, about how George never once asked her to hug anyone she didn't want to, about how Marlene always asked, "Is this okay?" before entering her room. She told them the things that mattered most weren't always big. Sometimes it was just someone knocking before they came in. The room was silent when she finished. One of the foster parents cried. Another whispered, "I never even thought of that." Word spread. Soon, Lily was asked to speak at community events, pediatric conferences, and even school board meetings. Not because she was a case, but because she was a compass. She became a gentle advocate, not just for survivors, but for prevention, awareness, and change. Angela Martinez, the doctor who first listened, now taught medical students how to spot red flags, and always credited Lily for changing how she practiced. Ryan Cooper helped draft new police training materials around child interviews, with Lily's story serving as the case study that reminded officers to slow down and pay attention. Emma, now a director of child welfare programs, often invited Lily to review materials, knowing her feedback came from lived truth. Lily never chased the spotlight. She didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to make sure no kid ever felt like she once did. Invisible. She once said during a panel discussion, "People think bravery is loud, but sometimes bravery is just staying. Staying in the room, staying present, staying open, even when you're scared." A journalist in the back row wrote that quote down and published it the next morning. It ended up taped to lockers, printed on bookmarks, and used in teacher trainings. Lily didn't know any of that at the time. She just went home that day, fed her cat, and helped Marlene prepare lasagna. Because that was Lily's quiet revolution. Not turning her past into a spotlight, but into a lantern. One that she held up steady and strong for those still finding their way. Let me know if you'd like to wrap this story with summary number 7, or move into the reflective conclusion and life lesson from summary number 8. At 17, Lily Hart wasn't trying to change the world. She just wanted to give something back. On Wednesday afternoons after school and before dinner, she volunteered at the Columbus Youth Center. Sometimes she read to the younger kids, her voice steady and calm. Sometimes she just sat with the new arrivals, kids who came in with trash bags instead of backpacks, who didn't trust anyone, who flinched when doors closed too fast. She never introduced herself as a survivor. She didn't need to. They could see it in her softness, in the way she never asked too many questions, in the way she always left space, room to breathe, to break, to begin again. One afternoon, Lily walked into the art room and found a boy sitting under a table, his arms wrapped around his knees. His name was Jaden. He was 9. He hadn't spoken a full sentence since arriving 3 weeks earlier. Lily didn't coax him out. She slid under the table and sat beside him. They didn't speak. She just opened her sketchbook and began to draw. A bunny, a girl with a braid, a sunflower, a light in the distance. Jaden peeked at the drawing, then picked up a crayon and drew a small house beside it. That was the moment Lily understood something she'd been feeling for a long time. She didn't have to fix anyone. She just had to sit in the quiet with them until they felt safe enough to reach for the light. Later that month, Lily was asked to help design a mural for the youth center's newly renovated wing. She gathered the kids and asked one question: "What does safety look like to you?" The answers came slowly. A nightlight, a warm hoodie, my dog, not being yelled at, someone remembering my name. They painted those answers across the wall, a riot of colors layered with handprints, stars, homes, and soft-eyed animals. In the middle of it all, they painted a path. It curved gently through the chaos, glowing like a beam of soft light. At the start of the path, Lily painted a small figure holding a lantern. No one asked who it was supposed to be. Everyone just knew. When the mural was unveiled, there were no press cameras, no speeches, just a room full of children and staff standing shoulder to shoulder in a silence so sacred it felt like a heartbeat. Angela, Ryan, Emma, they all came. George and Marlene stood at the back, their hands clasped tightly, tears in their eyes. Emma whispered, "She's the story that never gave up." And it was true. Lily hadn't set out to be brave. She had just refused to disappear. She had stayed, through the fear, through the silence, through the unbearable weight of remembering, and now she stood quietly in the light, holding it out for someone else. Not because she had to, because she could. Absolutely. Here is a touching 400-500-word conclusion to Lily's story, followed by a powerful life lesson and an emotionally resonant call to comment and subscribe. The tone is heartfelt, reflective, and inspiring, crafted especially for an American audience of adults who value stories of resilience, justice, and quiet bravery. Conclusion: the sound of her voice. Lily Hart never wanted to be a hero. She never stood on a stage demanding attention or glory. She never asked the world to listen. All she ever wanted was to feel safe, to sleep through the night, to be seen as something more than what had happened to her. And somehow, through the quiet choices she made, she became more than anyone imagined. Not because she shouted, but because she stayed. She stayed in the room when it was easier to run. She stayed with the pain when forgetting would have been simpler. She stayed with others, children, counselors, foster parents, when their silence mirrored the one she used to live in. And in staying, she taught everyone around her what true courage looked like. The girl who once whispered in an exam room with trembling hands became a lighthouse. Not flashy, not loud, but constant. And the most beautiful part, she wasn't saving the world alone. Everyone who listened, Angela, Emma, Ryan, Gina, the Harts, they carried her story forward in small, lasting ways. Through policy, through empathy, through showing up when it mattered, and through believing that even the quietest voice, when heard, can echo loud enough to shift the course of a system. Lily's life wasn't defined by what she survived. It was defined by what she chose to become after. Life lesson: you are not what broke you. Some of us carry scars that no one sees, wounds that don't bleed but shape every step we take. Sometimes healing doesn't look like victory. It looks like getting out of bed, choosing to trust someone new, saying "I need help," or simply surviving another day. But know this: you are not the worst thing that ever happened to you. You are every time you stood up, every time you stayed, every time you chose to live anyway. And your voice, no matter how small, how hoarse, how scared, matters. Just like Lily's did. We want to hear your story. Has Lily's journey touched your heart? Have you ever been a Charlie to someone? A quiet helper, a listener, a safe place? Leave us a comment below. Your words could be exactly what someone else needs today. And if this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, soul-stirring stories of hope, healing, and the human spirit. Because here, your voice is never too small to be heard. Let me know if you'd like me to compile the full story into one document or generate a narrated version.